So from your perspective, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you've seen executives and professionals have with their well-being in the workplace?
One of the biggest challenges is, so at the senior most levels, the challenges are that there's a lot of demands and there's almost nobody to talk to about them. So one of the things that senior leaders face is a certain amount of loneliness and an inability to have trusted people that they can confide in about what's going on. As you get to the next levels of the organization, what you get is the demands from both sides, right? You have the strategic picture and you're trying to fit into that, and you're trying to reconcile that with what's going on in the day-to-day. So you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. It ultimately comes down to energy challenges. It comes down to more energy drains on the system than there are replenishments of that energy. And so that can lead us into places like, how do we set boundaries? How do I protect the time that I need for my own mental health? How do I protect the time that I need to balance my work and family? And so those are some of the common challenges. Other things have to do with making decisions that affect people's lives and having to struggle to balance the needs of the organization with the needs of the people in it. So those are a couple of the things that come to mind.
Oh, yeah. I definitely have worked with clients where, each of those challenges have been kind of top of mind, like the number one driver for different clients in different situations. So what are some tips that you'd give an executive or professional if, perhaps they had some of those challenges, or maybe they just said, you know what, I want to proactively enhance my well-being at work?
There are a set of resilience muscles that we use. And so one of the tips I would give is work on practicing those, moving those muscles. So the first muscle is positivity. And that's the muscle that helps us see possibilities in situations and frame things in terms of opportunities rather than just in terms of problems. The second one is around confidence, around knowing your superpowers and continuing to develop and learn as a human. The third one is around priorities. And that has to do with knowing what to say yes to and knowing what to say no to. That's the boundary setting muscle. That's the muscle of not trying to take on everything and to be able to delegate, to be able to hand things off. And I want to come back to that one at the end, but let me just talk through the rest. The next one is creativity. And that's the ability to think outside the box, to look at things from different perspectives, to come up with unusual ideas for how to approach things. The next one is connection, and that's the muscle that we use to draw on support from other people, to collaborate with other people, to ask for help when we need it. Then there's a muscle around structure, and that's the muscle that we use to put systems and processes in place that enable us to use our energy efficiently. And then the final one is experimenting. That's the risk-taking muscle. That's the muscle that lets us say, hey, I wonder what happens if I do this, and rapid cycle learning from experience, from failure even, and moving forward. So the advice I would give is take an inventory and think about which of these things come most naturally to you, and are there some muscles that you'd like to build? And I'm going to circle back really quickly to the priorities muscle because it's a great example of how organizational cultures can enable or undermine people's ability to stretch these muscles. So if you've ever been in an organization where there's 100 different things going on, there's a couple of different ways that can play out. One is people say, oh, I can't do everything. Which things are most important? And the answer is, okay, these 3 things are most important. But sometimes it plays out, I can't do everything. And the answer is, I'm sorry, you just have to do everything. So in which of those settings is it easier to stretch that priorities muscle? Well, we set the tone as leaders. We set the tone in terms of how easy is it for people to say yes and no to things? How easy is it for people to reach out for help? How easy is it for people to take risks and try new things? So developing our own muscles and creating an environment that makes it easy for other people to flex their muscles are sort of the two halves of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in thinking about what you said about, someone's ability to kind of prioritize and say yes and no to things, I think there's probably a really big connection to burnout, right? Because if someone is not, putting up those boundaries, like you said, then I could just easily see them burning out.
What's interesting, and because you're in IO, you'll appreciate this. I've been reading some of the literature on burnout, and what I've found is that we often focus on one half of it, which is the demand side. Mm-hmm. Which is having too much to do, too many demands on our time, too many demands on our energy. But there's another side of it, which is too few resources. Okay, so there's a job demands and resources model that I really like. And reducing burnout is not always about subtracting. It's not always about taking things off the table. It's about recognizing what a well-resourced environment looks like, which has to do with, a collaborative team and a supportive leader and psychological safety and learning opportunities and all of the things that help us replenish and restore. Because burnout is really kind of the combination of too few resources and too many demands.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That is so interesting. And I think you're right. A lot of people overlook the too few resources part of that. They just think, I've got too much to do. I've got too much to do. But you could have too much to do because you don't have enough resources also, right? So
right, exactly. The metaphor that I use for that sometimes is you've got a phone and the phone's running out of battery, right? You can't possibly shut down enough apps, put it on airplane mode, whatever, to recharge the battery. What you've got to do is to plug into a power source of some sort. And so you think about, what does the power source feel like for you, for your workplace or whatever? And it has to do with people who nourish you. It has to do with work that lifts you up. It has to do with, having a sense of meaning and purpose. All of those things are the things that we often overlook when we ask the question about burnout.
yeah, I agree.